We often mistake emotional chemistry for emotional compatibility. That spark we feel when we meet someone who's lost, struggling, or needing just a little help can feel intoxicating. Like we've found our purpose, like we've been chosen to heal them. But that spark is not love. It's not connection. It's a reflex born from ego or even old wounds, the desire to feel needed, important, or validated by being someone's savior. Let's be clear, real connection, deep, lasting connection, does not grow out of one person pulling the other up a mountain. It grows when two people decide to climb together. It's easy to feel valuable when you're the one doing the saving, when you're the one they call in crisis, when they say, "You're the only one who's ever believed in me." And listen, encouragement is beautiful. Support is important. But if the entire dynamic relies on one person being the emotionally strong one, the motivator, the planner, the fixer, then that isn't a relationship. That's emotional labor disguised as intimacy. A true connection allows for vulnerability from both sides. Not just someone crying on your shoulder, but someone willing to hold you when you fall apart too. It's not just about saying, "I'll be here while you grow." It's about hearing, "I want to grow with you side by side." The problem with stepping into the rescuer role is that it often begins a cycle where your value in the relationship is measured by how helpful you are, not by who you are. You become the coach, the emotional crutch, the life manager, and without realizing it, you start neglecting your own growth. You start shrinking, compromising, or standing still to keep pace with someone else's healing. And that's not love. That's self-abandonment. What people often overlook is this. If someone only grows because you're pushing them, reminding them, motivating them, they're not actually growing. They're just being managed. And that management won't last forever. The moment you get tired or the moment you stop over-functioning, the illusion breaks. Their change was never owned. It was outsourced to you. You deserve a connection where growth flows both ways. Where you inspire each other by who you are, not by what you fix. Where you celebrate each other's progress without it costing your peace. That's what mutual growth looks like. It's empowering, not exhausting. It's about walking into the future as equals, not dragging someone behind you. Remember, the kind of love that lasts isn't built on saving someone. It's built when two people look at each other and say, "Let's rise together." That's where true connection lives, in shared evolution, not emotional rescue. There's a heavy burden many of us carry in relationships, often without even realizing it. The belief that we are responsible for someone else's change. That if we love them enough, are patient enough, give enough second chances, eventually they'll become the person we know they could be. That belief, however noble it may seem, is both exhausting and misleading. Because the truth is, you are not responsible for someone else's evolution. We have to be really honest about what motivates this kind of thinking. Often it comes from love, yes, but it also comes from fear. It also comes from fear. The fear that if we don't hold things together, everything will fall apart. The fear that if we step back, they'll collapse. The fear that if they never change, all our effort will feel like a waste. So we pour more into them. More time, more energy, more emotional investment. And the more we give, the more we start to feel entitled to the result. But personal growth doesn't work that way. No matter how much you want someone to evolve, if they don't want it for themselves, it won't stick. You can guide. You can inspire. You can even open the door. But they have to choose to walk through it again and again. Taking responsibility for someone else's growth is a trap because it puts you in a role you were never meant to play. A role they have to play for themselves. When you make their progress your job, you rob them of the very thing they need to become stronger. Self-accountability. Real change doesn't come from being pushed, it comes from an internal decision. The moment someone says, "I'm ready," not for them, not to keep the relationship, but for me. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent. It means you love them in a way that respects their autonomy. That says, "I believe in you, but I won't carry the weight of your decisions." It means you stop trying to control the outcome and start observing the pattern. Are they growing because you're constantly there to nudge them, remind them, rescue them? Or are they growing because they've made a conscious choice to do so? There is so much freedom in accepting this boundary. It gives you space to focus on your own evolution, to ask, am I growing? Am I being challenged in healthy ways? Am I emotionally safe here? Because a relationship should never cost you your own progress. And the moment you start over-functioning for someone else, you start under-functioning for yourself. You are allowed to love deeply and still let go of the belief that their growth is your responsibility. You can stand beside someone without carrying them. That's not giving up on them. That's choosing not to give up on yourself. There's a very subtle but powerful distinction between someone who walks with you and someone who walks behind you. And the difference isn't about physical presence. It's about emotional partnership. It's about energy, pace, intention. When someone walks beside you, they are an equal. A collaborator, they match your stride not because you're dragging them, but because they choose to walk with you. That's what the right people do. They don't rely on your momentum to keep moving. They bring their own. They bring their own. Too often, we fall into relationships where we feel like we're constantly having to lead someone forward, emotionally, mentally, even practically. We're making the plans, doing the emotional labor, creating the structure, holding the vision. And on the surface, that might feel like leadership or strength, but over time, it becomes lonely. Because no matter how strong you are, a relationship that's one-sided in motion starts to feel heavy. When you always have to be the one motivating, initiating, reminding, or even convincing, that's not togetherness. That's parenting. The right person doesn't make you feel like you're miles ahead of them, constantly checking back to see if they're keeping up. They meet you at eye level. They take responsibility for their own growth, their own mindset, their own dreams. And when you're struggling, they don't just offer sympathy from behind. They step up, side by side, to support you. There's something so powerful about knowing someone isn't leaning on you just to stay standing, but is standing strong in their own right. With you, not because of you. It means you can trust their presence. You can trust their progress. And most importantly, you can trust that if you take your foot off the gas, the relationship won't stall. Think about how that applies to your life right now. Are you in situations where you're always checking on someone's growth, always looking back and asking, are you okay? Are you doing the work? Are you still with me? That's a sign you're walking with someone who hasn't caught up to the journey and may not even want to. And if you have to slow down to keep them in your life, you're not walking together anymore. You're compromising your path to protect theirs. The right people want to walk with you. They don't need to be pulled. They're already moving, already asking themselves hard questions, already striving to become better, not just for the relationship, but for who they know they're capable of being. So if you want a relationship that lasts, stop looking for people to follow you. Start aligning with people who walk beside you, those who match your energy, your growth, and your direction. That's where partnership lives. That's where love feels like freedom, not friction. It feels good to be the reason someone changes. To be the one who inspired them to start showing up differently, who made them want to become a better version of themselves. We all want to feel that we matter in someone's life. But there's a quiet danger in this dynamic. Because when someone grows because of you, rather than with you or for themselves, it often leads to dependency, not development. You may start as the inspiration, but before long, you become the fuel source. Their motivation, their self-worth, their identity, all start tying back to you. And that might feel flattering at first, even romantic, but eventually it becomes a weight. Because if their growth is tied to your presence, then the moment you take a step back, even to breathe, to rest, or to focus on your own needs, the whole structure starts to wobble. This isn't about withholding love or support. Of course, you want to encourage the people you care about. But there's a difference between inspiring someone and becoming the reason they function. That's when their emotional well-being starts to depend on your mood, your approval, your attention. And instead of having a partner, you become a pillar holding up their self-worth. What often happens in these situations is subtle. You start to feel guilty for focusing on your own life. You second-guess expressing your needs because you worry it might derail their progress. You end up managing their growth like it's a full-time job, constantly adjusting your behavior so they don't regress. That's not healthy. That's not sustainable. And it's definitely not love in its truest form. Healthy growth, the kind that lasts, must come from internal commitment. It has to be rooted in self-awareness, self-respect, and a personal desire to evolve. Otherwise, it's performance. It's someone acting the way they think they need to act to keep you around. And no matter how well-intentioned that may be, it's still not real. farm. If someone tells you, "I only changed because of you," it might sound sweet, but listen carefully to what that means. What they're really saying is, "My growth was conditional on your presence." That's not empowerment. That's emotional outsourcing. True growth says, "You were part of my journey, but I chose to walk the path." That's the difference between dependence and maturity, between fleeting transformation and lasting change. You don't want to be the reason someone grows. You want to be someone who grows alongside people who are already doing their own work. Because then, when you support each other, it's not out of obligation or fear. It's out of respect. It's out of choice. And that's where love feels strong, not strained. When two people grow with each other, something powerful happens. It creates strength. Not just personal strength, but a shared strength that becomes the foundation of a relationship built to last. Growth that happens alongside someone else isn't just about individual progress. It's about building a sense of purpose together, a partnership where both parties are committed to evolving, learning, and supporting one another in a way that's balanced and inspiring. Think about what it means to grow with someone. It means you're both on a journey, not in isolation, but side by side. You're not carrying the weight of the relationship alone, and neither are they. Instead, you're combining your energy, your experiences, and your lessons to create something bigger than either of you could build alone. That's strength. That's a shared vision. When people grow with you, their growth isn't dependent on your constant input or effort. It's fueled by their own motivation, but also nurtured by your presence. They show up, ready to do the work on themselves, and at the same time, they're ready to encourage and challenge you in your own process. This mutual investment in growth creates a dynamic where both people feel valued for who they are and who they're becoming, not just for what they can do for each other. That shared purpose becomes a glue that holds the relationship steady through challenges. Because when you're both growing, you understand that setbacks aren't failures. They're part of the process. You learn to lean on each other without losing your individual identity. You become teammates, not rescuers. You communicate better, respect boundaries more, and celebrate successes together. The strength that comes from growing with someone also builds resilience. Life will throw curveballs. Circumstances will change. But when your foundation is a shared commitment to becoming better versions of yourselves, individually and together, you have something solid to return to. You have a partnership that doesn't crumble under pressure but adapts and strengthens. Most importantly, growing with someone means that you don't have to hide your struggles or pretend to be perfect. There's safety in vulnerability because you know your partner is committed to their own growth as well. That means they're more likely to hold space for your imperfections and support your healing, just as you do for them. So, when you think about the people you want in your life, don't just look for someone who needs you or someone you can fix. Look for someone who's willing to grow alongside you. Someone who's committed to the journey of becoming their best self while cheering you on to become yours. Because when growth is shared, it creates strength and purpose that no one can take away. It's so tempting to fall into the savior role in relationships. We see someone struggling, maybe they're stuck or hurting, and we feel like our purpose is to fix them. To be the one who rescues, who shows up with all the answers, who carries the weight of their pain, so they don't have to. But playing savior is one of the most exhausting and ultimately damaging roles you can take on. It steals your energy, limits your own growth, and most importantly, it keeps both of you stuck in an unhealthy dynamic. When you step into the savior role, you create imbalance. You become the one responsible for their progress, their mood, their choices, and that's a heavy responsibility that no one person should carry for another. It makes the other person dependent on you, not empowered by themselves. It may feel like love, but it's really control disguised as care. You're managing their growth instead of inspiring it. You're leading instead of partnering. True connection happens when you stop trying to save and start choosing equals. Choosing equals means choosing people who are ready to meet you where you are, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and who are willing to put in the work to grow alongside you. It means choosing people who don't expect you to carry them, but who can carry themselves and can support you too. Equals are not perfect, but they take responsibility for their lives and their growth. Choosing equals also means respecting your own boundaries and your own growth. It means recognizing that your time and energy are valuable. You don't have to invest in someone who isn't willing to invest in themselves. When you start holding that standard, something incredible happens. Your relationships become more balanced, more fulfilling, and more empowering. You stop feeling drained and start feeling energized. This shift also changes how you view love and partnership. Love isn't about rescuing someone or fixing them. In fact, it's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and for the people you care about. Boundaries are the way you say, I respect my time, my energy, and my emotional well-being. When you respect yourself enough to set limits, you teach others how to treat you. It's also important to realize that growth is often uncomfortable. It challenges old habits, beliefs, and patterns. It pushes people out of their comfort zones, which can feel scary and vulnerable. When someone chooses growth, they're choosing to face discomfort, uncertainty, and sometimes even rejection. But it's all part of the process of becoming who they're meant to be. When you accept that growth is a choice, you begin to focus on what you can control. Your growth. Your own growth. You stop trying to fix others and start working on becoming the best version of yourself. And ironically, when you do that, you often inspire others to make their own choice to grow. So the next time you feel frustrated that someone isn't changing in the way or time frame you hoped, remind yourself, growth isn't a demand you place on them. It's a choice they have to make for themselves. Your role is to support, not to control, to love, not to pressure, and to trust that when they're ready, they'll step into their own evolution. True connection isn't built on obligation, pressure, or one-sided effort. It thrives in the space where growth is mutual and voluntary, where both people choose to evolve together because they genuinely want to, not because they feel they have. This kind of connection is rare, but it's also the most rewarding and sustainable. When growth is mutual, both individuals show up fully, not just as who they are today, but as who they are willing to become. They see each other's potential and invest in supporting that potential without trying to control or force it. It's a partnership based on respect, curiosity, and a shared commitment to betterment. Voluntary growth means that no one is being coerced or guilted into change. Both people take responsibility for their own journeys. They understand that while their paths are intertwined, their growth is personal and self-driven. This freedom allows each person to explore, make mistakes, learn, and transform on their own terms, with the safety net of a supportive partner beside them. This mutual, voluntary growth creates a powerful dynamic where vulnerability becomes a strength rather than a weakness. When both partners are committed to evolving, they create an environment where they can be honest about their struggles and fears without fear of judgment. That openness deepens intimacy and builds trust. Because growth is a process full of ups and downs, having a partner who is also dedicated to their own growth means there's empathy and patience on both sides. Instead of blaming or resenting setbacks, you learn to lean into each other, understanding that progress isn't always linear but worth pursuing. This kind of connection also fosters balance. Neither person feels like they're carrying the other. Instead, they lift each other up, recognizing that sometimes one partner will be stronger and sometimes the other. The ebb and flow of life and growth become a dance rather than a struggle. When growth is mutual and voluntary, there's a sense of freedom within the relationship. Freedom to be imperfect, to try, to fail, and to keep trying. Freedom to change and evolve without fear of losing the connection. That's where true love and partnership live. In the space between two whole, growing individuals choosing to walk the journey together. So if you want a relationship that lasts and fulfills you, look for that mutual and voluntary growth. Look for someone who chooses to grow with you, not because they have to, but because they want to. Because when growth is shared by choice, connection isn't just possible, it becomes inevitable. It becomes inevitable. At the end of the day, the people who truly belong in your life are the ones who choose to walk alongside you, not the ones who need you to carry their growth for them. When growth is mutual, voluntary, and balanced, it creates a foundation of respect, strength, and genuine connection. A connection that can weather any storm because it's rooted in shared purpose and freedom. Remember, your role is not to fix, rescue, or save others. It's to be your authentic self, to set healthy boundaries, and to inspire by example. The right people will meet you there, ready and willing to do their own work, ready to grow with you, not just because of you. So, honor your journey, protect your energy, Protect your energy. Choose relationships that uplift rather than drain you. Because when growth is shared equally, love becomes a partnership, powerful, freeing, and transformative for everyone involved. And that's the kind of connection worth investing in. That's the kind of love that lasts.